Joining us now, Sheriff David Clarke, America's Sheriff, Senior Policy Advisor, WeBuildAWall.us. Sheriff Clarke, great to have you, sir.
John, it's a pleasure to be on with you. Hello to your listeners on this somber remembrance of 9/11.
Sheriff, where were you on 9/11?
I was in my office. I was still with the Milwaukee Police Department. I was the commanding officer of the Intelligence Division, and I had the TV on and saw the first plane fly in, and there was a lot of confusion going on, even on the television set as to what happened. Did a plane lose its course? Was the sun, involved? The glare of the sun coming out of the airport, so on and so forth. And then sometime later, when the second plane hit, and we knew what was going on, and America was under attack, all of the airlines were told to get the planes out of the sky to prevent further attacks. That was a great move, a smart move, a heads-up move at a time when everybody was kind of confused. But anyway, George Bush and Barbara Bush were flying somewhere, and their plane landed at a regional airport in Milwaukee called Signature Flight Support. And when their plane landed, as the commander of the Intelligence Division, I was put in charge of providing for his security. That's one of the things that we did. We had dignitary security. I'm trained in that by the Secret Service anyway. And so we went over there, provided for several days until he could leave the security for former President George Bush and Barbara Bush.
And then where did they go after that, Sheriff Clarke?
On their way, I don't recall where they were leaving after that. I just don't.
So they just had to touch down there, refuel, basically.
They had to stay here several days because if you remember,
right.
The airlines weren't allowed to get up and going again for several days, so they were kind of stuck, for lack of a better word, in Milwaukee, and we had them at a undisclosed location,
right,
hotel, and provided that security for about 3 days.
Wow. See, you know what? I never knew that. I bet most of our listeners didn't know that George and Laura Bush, I know he was in Florida at a elementary school when it happened, and they had to get back up in the air, but I was unaware that he was in Milwaukee and was there for 3 days. And here it is. Sheriff Clarke was providing the security, right? It's a small world, Sheriff, isn't it? Small world.
Very small world. I learn that every day.
I know. Learn it every day. And wow, unbelievable. Did you, just one more question on 9/11. At what point did it hit you? Did you say, oh, my God, we're under attack? Was it when the second plane hit?
Yeah, when the second plane hit, it was pretty obvious to me anyway what was going on.
Right.
As to who was responsible at the time, that was remained the question. But the president as well understood. President Bush down in Florida, as you indicated, when that second plane hit, we knew what was up.
Okay, let's go to a more pleasant topic. Well, for me, not for you, unfortunately. I don't know how long we're going to have to do this. And being a Cubs fan like you are, I don't know how you do it this season because it's up and down, up and down, up and down almost every day. They win, they lose, they win, they lose. Now they're only a game up. They get beat last night, 9-8 by San Diego. And the Cubs not very good on the road, clinging to a 1-game lead over Milwaukee, 2 over Philadelphia, 2.5 over Arizona, 3 over the Mets. So the problem is if anybody gets hot, the Cubs are toast. I mean, that's really the problem when you've got a 1-game lead, but 4 teams chasing you. It's not good for them because they have to jump over other teams. But if you're a Cubs fan, you got 4 teams all within 3 games. If one of them gets hot when you're on the road, it's over. Right? Tough.
Well, you're right. Let's unpack that a little bit, though. First of all, the Cubs can get hot because anything is possible when you talk about these other three or four teams getting hot. But the thing is that you get down the stretch, you're right. Somebody is going to get hot. It's just a matter of who. They're clinging to life. They really are. They're on life support. If you recall last year, they had a 3.5-game lead. They were in first place in the Central Division, National League Central. They had a 3.5-game lead with about 2 weeks to go. They lost that. They ended up tying the Brewers first place. They had a playoff. They lost the playoff game. Both teams were then in the wild card. In Wrigley, they lost the wild card game. So, it was a total collapse at the end of last season. And it just seems like that's what's going to happen again. But I guess looking on the bright side of this, at least we can get rid of Joe Madden and we can move on.
Yeah, I think you got to move on after this season. Just like the Red Sox moved on, they got rid of Dombrowski, so that's always a good thing. But, on the other hand, I can flip the glass over and say if I'm a Cubs fan and it's September 11th and I'm 4 games out of first and a game ahead of the wild card, I've got a playoff hunt, I got a playoff season, I've got a pennant race, and it could be worse. You could be 9 games out from the wild card. So, the good news is, look, as a fan, you want to be in a pennant race, right? You don't want to be 20 games out in September. So the Cubs have done that. And I think, like you say, they can get hot and still win the division. So there's a long way to go. But right now, I don't know. I think you're toast. We'll have to see.
Yeah, you're right. I'm a realist. Look,
Yeah.
they were, they're fading down the stretch. And you have to play good baseball, I think, coming down the stretch to have a chance in the playoffs anyway. And they're flip-flopping around. They're floundering right now. They're rudderless. So even if they were to get in, I mean, sure, anything can happen. But, like I said, I'm a realist, and I haven't totally given up, but at the same time, I see the handwriting on the wall.
Well, here's the good news. I know you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, and either they're really good or the Giants are really bad or somewhere in between. But I think they scored the first 5 or 6 times they had the football on Sunday. That offense looks really good. Dak Prescott looks like he's matured. You got Ezekiel back. They're a good team. I know the Giants have some holes, but even in the NFL, it's not easy in the first game of the season to score 5 times you got the football. Touchdowns. Not easy to do, and they did that.
It looked good, too, and it was fun to watch because last year one of the problems that the Cowboys had on offense is they when they got in the red zone, they couldn't score. They ended up with field goals. I think they led the league in fewest amount of touchdowns in the red zone, so it was encouraging to see that they were able to punch it across. But, they have the talent. There's just no doubt about it. But it is week 1. Again, I always pump the brakes on the enthusiasm. I think after week 4, we'll know kind of how teams are going to play out the season. So we got a few weeks to go before we can find any patterns. But I was very, very encouraged by their ability to score points. They gave up a lot of yards, though. The Giants moved the ball up and down the field. I think the Giants had about 405 total yards. It's a lot of yards, but not in this pass happy league. It's not anymore. But they got to shore up that defense. They have the makings of a shutdown defense, but it didn't show up. I did on the scoreboard, but you can't give up that many yards in a football game.
No question about it. Well, we'll see how it plays out. Week 2, things start evening out a little bit. So we'll see what happens with Dallas. And, of course, my Tennessee Titans also went to Cleveland, kicked their butt, all the hype. And nobody paid attention to us, and just we went in there, smash mouth football, and kicked the crap out of them. I think they're going to win again this week at home against Indianapolis. Look, if football, if you played it, you hit hard, you run the ball, that's what Tennessee does. It is going to keep them in a lot of games. I mean, the offense is not that prolific. They're going to score. I mean, they scored a bunch of points Sunday, but 21 of those on turnovers. It's a very low-scoring team with a really good defense. And, Mariota just tries to hang around, make something happen at the end of the game. I mean, that's been basically their formula to win. I'm not a Mariota fan. I'm really sick of the guy, to be honest. So we'll have to see how he does this season. I'm tired of being his apologist. And my attitude now is hand the ball off to Henry and just get the hell out of the way and go from there. Okay. Let's get to
you guys, though. But the Titans did football fans a favor because a lot of us are tired of all the barking going on coming out of Cleveland and how this was a foregone conclusion. And when you talk big, you got to back it up. And they kind of got sand kicked in their faces. That was good to see. They ate some humble pie on Sunday.
Great analogy. Sand kicked in their face. That's right. They were the Muscle Beach, right? All the talk and the hype and. My team got basically ignored like they were chopped liver. I mean, the Titans are not a Super Bowl caliber right now, but they've had 3 winning seasons in a row, made the playoffs 2 out of 3 times. They're a pretty solid club, and they got totally disrespected, and they shut Cleveland up. at least for 1 week. We'll see what happens Monday night with the Jets. All right, that's our football preview and post view. Now let's get to politics. Trump firing neocon warmonger John Bolton the other day. Then Bolton says, no, I resigned, and he's sending text out. You know, if I'm with the president and I'm in the White House and we just don't agree and I get fired, I'm just going to shut up, pack my stuff and go, right? Just go, just go home. Instead, he's like texting Fox and friends. Like, shut up, you little man with the mustache. Aren't you sick of these people, Sheriff?
Without a doubt. But, there's a couple things going on here. One is, one of the things that's frustrating to me anyway, I just said frustrating because I support this president. I want to make that clear. I'm going to support him all the way through 2020, the re-election and the 4 years that will follow that. But the thing that's frustrating to me is he keeps picking people from the swamp to serve him. As you indicated, when you serve the president, you serve at the president's pleasure. When you no longer need it, you just go and you keep your mouth shut. If the president says he fired you, fine. You don't get no award words. No, I really quit. No, you fired. No. But the thing is, he keeps drawing from the swamp. These are all swamp dwellers. I like John Bolton, but he's a swamp dweller. Most of these people are. They've made a career of just hanging around Washington, D.C., and I think if he wants a fresh view, he needs to consider, some people outside of that Washington bubble. But that's a decision the president gets to make. I support it. I support the hiring of John Bolton. I support the firing because if the president feels that, he wants to get somebody else to serve in that position, that is his prerogative. So it's time for everybody to move on. He said he'll name a new security advisor next week. Now, let's hope it's a fresh face.
I agree with you 100% because we still keep getting RNC people, swamp people, George Bush 1 people, George Bush 2 people, Jeb Bush people, Rubio people. The RNC continues to pump these people into the White House across the board because there simply is not enough high-profile America First advocates. So the RNC has been in control of this, and I'm not going to blame the RNC, but that is what continues to happen. So we kind of get this revolving door of people that serve Republican administrations for whatever reason. Most of their agenda doesn't line up with Trump's America First agenda, and he has taken over the Republican Party. And so we still get these George Bush remnants, if you will, coming in, and the president keeps bringing them in. And you're right. At some point, you got to say, you know what? If I don't believe in regime change, which has been our U.S. CIA policy, as you know, for 4 decades. If I don't believe in regime change, let's stop bringing in people that want regime change because you're going to get this constant conflict. Let's bring people in that are more aligned with your vision of America First because, Sheriff, I know there's a lot of Republicans, they think, well, when Trump goes away, it'll all go back to normal. It'll all go back to Romney, McCain, George Bush 1, George Bush 2. It'll all go back to the way it was. I don't think it ever is. I think the Trump faction has taken the Republican Party over. Certainly right now he's the leader. But I think if he wins re-election in 2020, this movement in 2024 is not going away.
No, it's not. But in defense of the president, too, when he's filling out his staff, he's got to consider who can get confirmed by the U.S. Senate. And then the Senate is controlled by the GOP. But again, these are all Washington insiders, too. They've lived in that bubble. They've been drinking the Kool-Aid out of the Potomac for a long time. They have Potomac fever. And if you can't get them through, it's going to be very difficult. The president is not going to nominate somebody that he can't win Senate confirmation. So he's got to. He's kind of threading a needle there. That whole damn Washington establishment. It's a clique, and their attitude is, well, that guy's not one of us. He hasn't been here long enough. He hasn't kissed the ring. We don't know this guy. We can't control this guy because we don't know him. We don't know, we don't have any secrets on dirty little secrets. And so it's hard for the president to just, bring all people in from outside because they'll never get approved by the Senate. And that's the GOP's fault. So that's why you mentioned the RNC. Because they're the ones that can and should. I mean, it's advice and consent. We've talked about that on your program. But at the same time, if the president wants that person to serve and they're capable that he should be allowed to do that, but that's not how Washington works. So the president's between a rock and a hard place on some of this stuff. But it's why nothing changes in Washington, John.
Right.
It's a big musical chairs. They just move from one place to another. First they're secretary of this, then they're undersecretary over here, and then they're some, in some federal agency over there. All these people have long established Washington careers, and if you want, there's an old adage: if you want to change the direction of a corporation, a team, whatever, then you have to change the people. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean in a musical chairs fashion. I'm talking about some fresh faces, people who are competent, people who are capable, people who have leadership ability, because that's really all those agencies are about. It's about leadership ability. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be for instance, somebody in the oil industry to be the Secretary of Energy. You don't need somebody, to be the Secretary of Education that's a long-time bureaucrat teacher. That's what I like about his selection of Betty DeVos, although she's let us down. But that's a little what goes on there, and that's why nothing changes, but it's very frustrating to the American people.
John Fredericks Radio Network, we're with America Sheriff David Clarke. You can follow him at America Sheriff. Also, Senior Policy Advisor, webuildtheworld.us. Sheriff, when are we going to get Sheriff Clarke in the White House?
I'm a little too smart for that. No, look, when the president first got there, we had some discussions and about some particular positions. I didn't feel it was a good fit, not because of the president. So that's why I decided at first if you recall, it was with America First, the super PAC, the Trump family super PAC. And that was a good fit at the time because they were trying to set up an outside army. They needed fighters. Everybody knows that I'm a fighter. And so that kind of fit well. I could fight. I didn't have to deal with ethics investigations and complaints of this and all this nonsense that goes on when the left wants to get rid of you, when Washington establishment wants to get rid of you. Look what they did to the president. Right? They know how to do it. Ethics complaint after ethics complaint after ethics complaint, and it just wears you down. And so, I got wind of that sort of thing as to what goes on. I felt I should stay on the outside army. So I'm going to continue to fight from this president on the outside using platforms like yours. I want to thank you for that, by the way. And other entities. I write a column for townhall.com. And, people can follow me on Parler, Parler, at Sheriff Clarke. I got off Twitter. Twitter was shadow banning me, and I wasn't going to put up with that crap anymore. So you can follow me there. But there's other ways that you can fight for this administration without being inside the White House, because when you're in there, you're in a cocoon. And I'll tell you what, all you have to do is look at somebody wrong. Someone makes a complaint. You go to lunch with somebody and someone buys you a cup of coffee. That's an ethics a federal violation. They'll be looking to put me in jail, for heaven's sakes, for accepting a cup of coffee somewhere. So, stay put for now. But like I said, if the president calls, you got to step up and you got to serve.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'd love to see you in that capacity, or, certainly keep doing what you're doing. Final question, big win, North Carolina yesterday. Is it a telltale sign or an anomaly?
Hard to say. It really is, because had the GOP lost the seat, of course, the Democrats today would be doing the touchdown spike.
Right.
They'd be doing the happy dance. These things they're not linear. It's one thing at a time. It was good to see that they could hold on to that seat, but they were expected to. So that's why I said it's kind of like a game you're supposed to win. You win. It's no need to overanalyze or overread it. You held on to it. We got a big fight coming up in 2020. It's going to be an epic battle because they've done everything they could to get rid of this president by other means, by any means necessary. That didn't work. But the one way our system is set up is if you want to make that change, you do it at election times. They'll have their chance. They're energized. They're going to be ready. They're going to have their ducks in a row. But we can counter that very well. We can counter that. It's going to be uphill for us in 2020. We don't get to fight on level ground. We don't get to fight downhill. We always, the conservatives, I say we always have to fight uphill, but that's okay. It doesn't bother me one bit because victory is sweeter.
Well, you're a fighter.
You come from behind.
I know. I agree with that. It is sweeter. It is sweeter, and we need to play smash mouth football just like the Titans do. If we invite you to Virginia to help us out, Will you come?
Oh, of course.
All right. We're going to do that. I'm going to put something together. As soon as the leadership team for Trump, Virginia is named, hopefully I'll be on it. If I'm not much I can do. If I am, you'll be the first phone call that I make, Sheriff. We're going to get you down here. We're going to get the base fired up and try to win this election like they did in North Carolina 9. Sheriff Clarke, thanks for being with us. Cowboys are going to win again this Sunday. We will talk to you pretty soon. We're going to get you to Virginia.